This is the Project Management Podcast. We bring project management topics to beginners and experts. Find us on the web at www.thepmpodcast.com or send your emails to pmpodcast@gmail.com.
Hello and welcome to episode number 124. I am Cornelius Fichtner. This is the Project Management Podcast for the 2nd of August 2009. Nice to have you with us. In this episode of our program, I am welcoming back Ron Holohan, PMP, and Shawn Futerer, PMP, to a roundtable discussion on the Project Management Office, the PMO. Ron works for a large consumer electronics company, and a number of project managers directly report to him. He also created the company's internal PMO portal. Shawn works for a telecommunications provider, is in charge of one of several large projects, and also has other project managers who are reporting to him. So they know about PMOs. We begin our roundtable with Ron's definition of what a PMO is, compare to how this fits with all our understanding of real-life PMOs, and then we discuss various aspects, tips and tricks from our PMOs. Today's episode is sponsored by Rike. How do you assign tasks and track your team's progress? Calls, emails, and spreadsheets. And all that makes you buried in routine work. To get the full insight into projects and save up to 25 hours a month, thousands of managers worldwide use Rike. To try Rike free and get an exclusive limited time 25% Project Management Podcast discount on your 1-year subscription, visit www.rike.com. Apply PMP as the promotional code. I only have 2 more things to say before we get started with our roundtable here. And those 2 things are the names of the lucky folks who won a copy of Peter Taylor's book, The Lazy Project Manager. And they are Marcus de Clay Barros. He writes to us from Toronto in Canada. He's one of the free podcast listeners. And Shannon Vetz, who is a subscriber of the Premium Project Management Podcast. So, congratulations to both of you. And now, let's move on to our PMO Roundtable with Ron Holohan and Shawn Futerer. Ron Holohan, PMP, is a program manager and has been involved in project management for over 13 years. Currently, he's a PMO manager whose work focuses on new product development in the consumer industry. Prior to becoming a program manager, he has been a project manager on over 15 different new project development teams, varying in size from 7 to over 30 full-time team members. The total yearly revenue generated from products for which he is responsible is well over $75 million. Shawn Futerer started his career in 1992, managing quality control projects for a small manufacturing company, and is currently working in a PMO for a Fortune 50 telecommunications company where he supervises project managers for the North region. Over the course of his career, Shawn has managed projects for all shapes and sizes, with budgets of up to $100 million. Shawn has a keen interest in the methodologies, strategy, planning, and operations. Enjoy the roundtable.
The Project Management Podcasts feature interview. Today with Ron Holohan and Shawn Futerer.
Fellow project managers, I have 2 gentlemen on the line today. First of all, we have Ron Holohan from the PM411.org podcast. Hello, Ron. Welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you, Cornelius. It's great to be back.
Absolutely. And your website, PM411.org, if I remember correctly, right?
That is correct.
Wonderful. And on the other line, we have from theicpm.com, Shawn Futerer, manager of the International Community of Project Managers. Hello, Shawn.
Hello, Cornelius, Ron. Glad to be here.
Cool. I'm very happy to have you both on the line again and doing a round table on the topic of PMOs, either Project Management Office, Program Management Office. I've also heard it defined as piss me off and also defined as provides more opportunity. So nobody really knows what PMO stands for. Thus, my first question for you, Ron, how would you define a PMO, say from a theoretical standpoint, from, the textbook point of view? What is a PMO?
Well, I think you're correct that it can be defined as either project or program management office. I know the PMBOK actually has a glossary, and it does list both entries for PMO. And the difference, I think, is the project management office. They state something to the effect that it's a group within an organization that has responsibility for centralized and coordinated management of projects under its domain. And these, various responsibilities include providing project management support for resources, methodologies, tools, techniques, templates, process control, governance, and even direct management of projects. The other definition is a little bit different, program management office. And I think with program management office, they do a lot of the same function as a project management office, but they're looking at those types of projects that have key areas that are similar. And so they're looking at programs rather than just projects, and they're reporting on the metrics or on the health of programs in addition to the individual projects themselves.
Okay, so it's just a different level. Project management office, individual projects, program management office. You take the individual projects, you group them together, and you manage them almost like a portfolio.
Right, and that's my view on it. I'm not sure if that's everyone's view or if everybody within a program management office actually does that, but that's how I differentiate between the two.
Well, let's find out. Shawn, how does this definition correspond with the PMO that you have in your company?
I agree largely with what Ron has just described, right? In terms of the difference between project management office and program management office. What I will say is that the similarities between the two lie in that the PMO, whether project or program office, the purpose is to enable. It's what I like to call a system of enablement, and that's everything from the defined methodology or approach to project or program management within the company, to the tools, to the processes, and so forth. So, kind of a simplistic view, but to answer the question, what's the purpose of PMO? How's it defined? It's the system that enables the people to accomplish the goals laid out before them in a systematic, scalable, defined, and most importantly, reportable method. Reporting from a PMO perspective based on time, cost, quality, the triple constraint, so to speak, is important. From my experience, largely how the PMO is defined as a value add.
Yeah, if I asked three other people what their definition of a PMO is, we would get three different answers again.
Including piss me off.
But that's the great thing about it, though, right? Is you can use it in a variety of circumstances, in a variety of different ways to meet the goals of very different companies. But the premise for what a PMO is doesn't necessarily change, but the definition of how it's used changes in every circumstance.
One question that I'm going to ask later on is, what's your favorite PMO resource? And mine is a book. And in this book, on page, let's see, what are we on? 20, I believe here, figure 1.1. This is by Gerard Hill. He gives an overview of the PMOs the way that he sees them, and he sees 5 stages, right? And it goes from stage 1, project office, all the way up to a stage 5, center of excellence. And this is really what the trouble is, right? A PMO is different things to different people. Mm-hmm. For instance, the second PMO that I was working in was more of was more of a community of practice, not a center of excellence, of course. The first one was a center of excellence. The second one was a community of practice, where we as project managers got together and we defined amongst ourselves, how do we manage our projects here? Because we were a very young company, startup company, and we didn't have all these processes in place yet. So we had to define them ourselves. So we were very, very immature from that point of view, but we decided we needed something. And what we created was more of a community of practice PMO. So it means different things to different people. Now, what I did before we started this conversation here, all day long, I sent out messages onto the Twitterverse and the Facebookverse, and I asked people, what would you like to know from the people on the call tonight? And I got 3 questions from the various people who follow me on Twitter and Facebook. And the first one here is from Srinidhi. And he is a technical project manager, he says, with love for technology, project management, and product marketing. At least that's what his bio on Twitter says. And his question, I think, is pretty much aimed at you, Ron, based on the company that you're working in. He asks, would the PMO structure and function differ in product services versus product development? In a product development company? Because I if I remember correctly, you're in product development, right?
That is correct, yes.
So what's your view on this?
That's a very good question, and I guess I'll answer it with both yes and no. How's that for an answer?
Good. Moving on. Next question.
Yeah. No, I believe that just because a company focuses on product services doesn't necessarily mean it needs a PMO, but plenty of IS and healthcare services do have PMOs. And I agree with Shawn that PMOs are really there to enable. They're there to set the process, because really what you want to do is instead of starting from point 0 for every project, you want to have a template, if you will, of best practices on how to develop something, whether it's a service or it's a new product. And the reason why it's also no is I believe that every company, it has its own culture, it has its own geographical locations, its own products or services that it provides, its own customer base. So every company is unique. And as a result, every PMO really needs to be tailored to its own company. You can't just take company A's PMO and transfer it to company B without making any changes and expect it to work exactly the same way for both companies. So my answer is yes and no. I think PMOs are important for both product development and product service, but it is also something that, regardless, needs to be tailored to the individual company.
Would you then say that there is a difference between product services PMO and product development PMOs on a general level?
General level. I think, in terms of types of service, like let's just look at IS, for example. And I've talked to, I went to a PlanView conference a couple years ago and was talking to a gentleman about PMOs, and he worked for actually a IS department PMO for a healthcare company, and his focus was on lots of really small projects. We're talking, in some cases a few days to maybe a few weeks, rather than product development, which may be, depending on the product, it could be a few months to many years, actually.
Yes.
So I think in those cases, in a general sense, services may have a different set of, organizational assets that allow it to quickly move through the process without too much overhead, compared to maybe product development, where you want to reduce risks over a length of time to ensure that you ship a product on time.
Okay, so general differences, but it depends. Yeah. It depends is once again the the correct answer in this case.
Yeah, from my experience, that's the case.
Yeah. Let's move on to the next question that we got from Twitter. This one here is from QAICA. That's his Twitter ID. His name is Sid Carter. He's from Canada, and he even has a blog called Project Management on the Drive Home. And I see that he follows everybody here on Twitter. He follows you, Ron. He follows the ICPM. He also follows Josh Nankivil. So he follows the big names here in project management on podcasting and blogging. And I think this is a question that you could answer, Shawn, because it's all about ePMOs. His question is, what experience and suggestions do you have in regards to implementing an ePMO, that's an enterprise PMO, in large organizations using very few resources? Shawn, what do you think of this?
So I can offer kind of a unique perspective on this question. Mm-hmm. And so let me just lay a little background here. For the past 8 or 9 years, I've worked for a Fortune 50 company in a PMO. The challenge that the company I work for has is they operate multiple PMOs. We don't have an enterprise PMO. And so from my perspective, an enterprise PMO in a large corporation would be an overarching umbrella for project management company-wide, regardless of the organization that's running the project, whether that be IT or some other organization. So I'm coming at this question from the perspective of what's missing if you don't have this ePMO structure. So I'm very much in favor of the enterprise PMO setup, because it brings quite a few value adds and benefits to a large organization. One example is resource management. So in an ePMO, there's fewer chances that multiple resources are assigned to same or similar tasks. Whereas in what I call a siloed PMO structure, where you have multiple project offices functioning without any oversight, there's an increased chance where similarly skilled assets, whether that be people or otherwise, are assigned to like tasks. So there's an opportunity for the business to reduce a certain amount of cost by implementing an ePMO structure as it relates to resource. And then you take a step back and you look at process. Again, multiple PMO organizations without an overarching umbrella often operate with different tools, techniques, and processes. In an ePMO structure, the concept is to enable the business with, like processes, a streamlined, standardized approach to project management. And there's always going to be slight variations and differences based on the organization using that structure, and that's to be expected. But largely, if every project manager, theoretically, is using the same approach to project management or similar approach to project management under the guidance of the EPMO, you've got a baseline for time, cost, quality, and other metrics, that can be gauged company-wide as opposed to organization-wide. So there's a certain benefit in that for the company as a whole. There's a plethora, a multitude of ways to look at this. There are some inherent challenges with an EPMO. Bigger businesses tend to move more slowly than, smaller, more agile pieces of the business. So there may be a negative impact to the company from that perspective. But large in part, to answer the question, I'm very much in favor of the enterprise structure from a resource, tools, software, methodologies, strategy perspective, from all those various perspectives, because it seems to make sense for the business that I'm in. So let me leave it at that for a minute, Cornelius, and let's throw it back your way. You've got quite a bit of experience in the PMO world. What are your thoughts on this question?
Well, I have to tell you that the PMOs that I've been working on most of my life were all small. We were mostly on IT focused, and from that point of view, there really was only one PMO, and we were dealing with the PMO activities within our department, within our area. I never had a situation where I was in such a Fortune 50, Fortune 500 company. The largest company that I was in was probably a Fortune 5,000 company, right? Where we had a group that was this large, where you needed multiple levels of PMO. And I think I'm already jumping ahead here, because with the third question that we have is in fact almost I've almost answered it right here. This one is from Peter Tillemans from Antwerp in Belgium, and he wrote to us on Twitter. And by the way, Peter, you're only following me on Twitter. You should be following Ron Holohan and the ICPM as well. So there you go. So Peter, thank you for the question, but you need to follow these guys as well. His question is, I always hear it's bad for the creation of a business or corporate PMO to be associated with IT. What do you think? I think his question points into the direction that in the early days, when you created a PMO, it was usually an IT PMO. The PMO manager reported to the IT, the head of IT, be that a CIO or sometimes even the finance manager who is in charge of IT. And in my opinion, the answer here is once again, well, it really depends. If your charter of your PMO is we are IT focused, we manage IT projects, well, then it's fabulous if you are associated with IT. It's fabulous if you report to the CIO, because then you can work with the CIO, and the CIO is your lever. The CIO is the person who makes sure that people follow the processes, use the templates and the methodology that you from the IT PMO promote. However, if you're supposed to be, a corporate-wide PMO and you're still reporting to the CIO and you're an mostly IT-focused PMO, well, then the other organizations are not really going to follow what you're doing. So from that perspective, I think you need to you need to move it up a notch. And by moving it up, of course, I mean moving it up in the organizational chart onto the next level, and maybe put your PMO under the ownership of, I don't know, a very senior manager, or directly under the ownership of the CEO, which brings me to another soapbox of mine, and that's the fact that everybody always questions, well, do we need a PMO? If you look at organizations today, when we build an organization, a functional organization, there is no question. We need a marketing department. We need a finance department. We need development. We need everything. But do we need a PMO? Do we really need a PMO? Let me ask let me ask here what the value is of a PMO. I only see overhead of a PMO. I don't think we need a PMO. Yes, we do need a PMO. Every organization nowadays is so strongly driven by projects. If you don't have a PMO that's really at the very top, almost a branch like the marketing department, a branch like your finance department, you're making a mistake. Right? You don't have the support that you need to manage all these highly strategic projects that you have in an organization. So the question, is there a value in having a PMO? To me, is detrimental. The question has to be, how long can we survive if we don't have a PMO in these days? Right? So, okay, I'm getting off my soapbox here. I could talk about that one for hours, and you notice I don't have strong feelings about this. Right?
No, I agree with you completely on that topic. I mean, I see some companies that still run projects within departments, as you mentioned, that are supposed to deliver to multiple stakeholders throughout the organization, and they don't have a system of ensuring that they're capturing the requirements they need and documenting those requirements and following some best practices of project management. And, I think a PMO, an organization within the company that focuses on ensuring projects get done, efficiently and effectively is paramount in this economy, in this global, world that we have today, where we're interacting and competing with global markets. I think to become very competitive, you have to streamline, it's kind of like lean manufacturing or anything else. You have to streamline how your projects are run. And to me, having a repeatable process that's governed by a PMO is the best way of doing that.
Yeah, and I guess you're probably living that day in, day out, right? Because you're in the consumer electronics / entertainment products.
Right. And the neat thing about the company I'm working for now is we do technically, we don't call it a PMO, but we're basically a PMO. We're dedicated to ensuring that, we are documenting and leveraging templates and process and things throughout at least product development. My previous company, we did projects within departments, and it's night and day difference. We can estimate so much better in my current company just because we know the process. We know what it takes to develop a new product now.
All right, great. Well, on this call, I want to get through 2 more questions that I have here for you. And the first one really is sort of a combined question. Shawn, tell me, where do you see the greatest benefits and also the greatest challenges of your PMO in your organization?
What a fantastic question.
Thank you.
So, it truly is, because it piggybacks off of what Ron was just saying about the value of a PMO. In my organization, some of the greatest assets that we bring come in the form of cost controls, scalability. I don't know what the right term for this would be, but there's a what I'll call a soft cost involved in our PMO savings. From a savings perspective, we're saving time because we've taken the time to implement and fine tune the methodology and the approach to what we do. So projects that live within our siloed PMO, we're achieving results that are far and above better year over year than we had previously. So we can boast 40, 50, even 60% improvement rates in our cycle times. So cycle time being project start to project finish, cradle to grave, so to speak, which is amazing.
Yeah, 50%. That's incredible.
It is, but that comes in the form of lessons learned because, I mean, historically, we weren't very good at what we were doing because we didn't have the defined processes in place. So as we define them and as we fine tune them, we gained efficiencies from that. And so it takes, I guess the point in that is it takes time to not only set up your PMO, but get it to a point where it's running smoothly and truly adding benefits to the bottom line. We've, I guess, been in business as a structured PMO for maybe 5 out of the last 9 years. And the last 4 years have been a structuring, restructuring, and fine-tuning iteration to get to the point where we are achieving superior results over the past 12 or 16 months. So cost control, resources, tools, scalability, and structure through a defined methodology are really what our PMO bring to the table for the bigger company.
Mm-hmm. Ron, what's it on your end?
I echo pretty much what Shawn said. For us, our business success in my company is based on meeting needs in a consistently predictable manner through, product development, delivering products. So having a repeatable process is really required. It's required to translate those needs or the customer needs into products. And so for us, having project teams and our internal stakeholders familiar with a standard set of organizational process assets to develop these new products, we're really, helping to reduce the variability in terms of product development costs, schedule, and scope. And, the folks that are working as a PMO at my company really help to define and govern the process through the management of various, process training of project managers and project team members, corporate, divisional, and departmental policies and procedures, around projects, creating templates, and project reporting. So having those assets in place, I see as the biggest benefit of having a PMO at my company.
Mm. I really can't add much more to this. Shawn, you were going to say something.
Yeah, you know what? I was just going to comment on something that Ron had said. You called out repeatable process, and that gave me just a new perspective on a question that I should be asking in my company. I talked earlier about big business having siloed PMOs with no overarching structure that defines the operating procedure, the methods. And as Ron said, repeatable process, it just kind of dawned on me that that's the way our PMOs are structured. Mm. Each PMO is set up the way that it's set up because it has a repeatable process. So maybe I need to give a little bit more thought to my viewpoints on enterprise PMO and the advantage and disadvantage, and really kind of take a step back and do some more SWOT analysis, get back to basics.
Mm. Yeah, in my particular case, because all my PMOs that I've been working for were much, much smaller than what you have, the repeatable processes, the availability of the templates, and the sheer availability of the PMO, and making sure that you as a project manager don't have to be the hero. Mm-hmm. I'm the hero. I know how I manage projects.
Right.
You're not alone, right? There are 5 other guys and girls with you, and you have a methodology that you follow. That was really the major benefit that we all got out of having a PMO, whether it was a formal PMO or whether it was just a community of practice, as I had mentioned earlier. So that really was, from my point of view, the major benefit that we got out of having a PMO. So
I think you asked in your original question about challenges as well.
Yeah.
What do you guys see as the challenges within your organizations?
Well, I could tell you that in my last organization, people just weren't following it.
Right.
We were in an IT department, and we had a really cool one-page methodology. And I mean, a one-page project management methodology. It was software development methodology, right? And
Right.
It was mostly focusing on documenting what you deliver to the customer. That was really the major focus that we had there, because we were such an immature organization when it came to management of projects. So it was really the focus on let's document what we have. People just wouldn't use it, even if it was only a page long. So that was the greatest challenge that we have, and we overcame it by doing nothing and waiting until the auditors showed up and told us that there were 700 missing documents. And then suddenly everybody, started going, "Oh my God!"
Freaked out. Yep.
Yeah, everybody freaked out. Yeah. So that was the greatest challenge that we had, and overcoming it by just applying a huge whip to people.
Right.
Yeah.
What about you, Shawn?
So my challenges are plentiful, as can be expected with any big business. The ones that I'm focused in on right now, are ones I mentioned earlier. Multiple organizations performing similar like tasks. It costs us time and ultimately money to educate and re-educate resources from these various groups on each individual PMO's processes. So there's an opportunity for improvement and a cost savings for the company for us to focus in on that. But challenges inside of my PMO are less process oriented and more development, like professional development oriented. We have a very I guess senior is not the right word. We have a very tenured group of people in our organization. I guess the PMO that I work in is about 250 people dedicated, and then every one of those people has indirect responsibilities for other resources. So as we mature this PMO organization, the development of so many people has to follow naturally. And often we get behind the curve on the development of the individual professionals, and they're not always able to keep pace with the development of the organization. Mm-hmm. So those are my big challenges. The only other significant challenge worth mentioning is we're a $500 million revenue generating PMO, so we have our own sales organization attached to us. So picture a sales organization selling a product coupled with a service provided by multiple project managers as a package deal. So challenges in keeping pace with what's being sold versus how we implement. There's often some disparity there. So that's a lesser challenge that we're faced with, but challenge nonetheless.
Yes,
right.
Ron, you haven't told us about your challenges yet.
Very similar to the ones you both brought up. I think the biggest challenge we have is occasionally we'll get someone, sometimes high up in the organization, sometimes a project manager that really feels, there's too much overhead with our PMO process, and they want to try to do it without a project management plan or do it without a fixed budget, and I can tell you every single time that they feel someone suggests this as a way of getting to the finish line quicker and more efficiently, every single time I've seen it happen at my current company, it turns out that they miss by a mile, basically. That they miss deadlines, they miss budget, they miss resource, sharing availability, things like that. And I feel that process should be flexible within an organization, and there should be opportunities to plan certain parts of the process that may not be needed at the initiation or planning stage of a project, but just to kind of throw process and throw the PMO organization out the window it's a challenge. Some people want to do that, and luckily we're starting to have some lessons learned and data that supports that. You know what, the PMO actually does help teams.
I think it all boils down to, once again, senior management support and compliance, doesn't it?
Right. Yeah. And definitely in the case that you mentioned, Cornelius, where no one wanted to follow it, it sounds like if senior management had really stepped up and said, we're doing this, it could have been a different situation.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Once they realized that the auditors were coming, they stepped up, trust me.
Right.
All right, let's end our roundtable today and give our listeners something to do. And the last question is all about our favorite resources in regards to PMOs. And I'll go first because my favorite resource, I already mentioned it earlier on, is a book. At least it's currently my favorite resource. I'm not sure if I have to change it at some point. It is a book written by Gerard Hill. It's called The Complete Project Management Office Handbook. I have it right here. It is only 706 pages thick.
Wow.
Yeah, this is the compendium, right? This is, if you want to know anything about PMOs, this is it. This is the textbook. You could think of this as the Bible of PMOs. This is heavy. It's a hardcover, and I think he even no, it's not the one. Oh yes, here it is. He even wrote into it for me here. A friend of mine here, Gerard, who wrote it. And so this is really the place that I go to if I want to know something about PMOs, and go back to the basics. But I'm slowly but surely, also adding another book to it. And this is another interview guest of mine that was recently here, Mark Perry. And he wrote The Business-Driven PMO Setup. So this is mostly focusing on, how do we set up PMOs. And this is also a very good book because I wrote a chapter in it. It's a collaboratively created book. It's very entertaining. It's very readable. It's not a dry textbook. That's what I like about this one. Let's see how thick is this. 494 pages. So they're both thicker books, but they're worth your money and worth your time. So, Shawn, what is your favorite PMO resource? Where do you go if you need help?
Well, at the moment, so let me preface this by saying I'm doing a lot of managing upward these days.
Yes.
And as a result of that, I've become very attached to a book called Execution, The Discipline of Getting Things Done. And it was written by Larry Bossidy and Ram Charan. It's only 278 pages long, so it's kind of a quick read. But it will help any project manager, any manager for that fact, speak the lingo of the people that make decisions that affect your PMO. So when you're managing upward, your ability to speak the lingo and influence and motivate people becomes vitally important to achieving your goal. So they speak a lot about organization structure, do's and don'ts of PMOs and other business facets. It's just a fascinating book, and like I said, quick read. I would recommend it to anyone.
Yeah, and considering that both Ron and I have been talking about the fact that, the upper management wasn't very supportive of our PMOs, good thing to have this particular book. Yeah, and of course, I'm going to make sure that we have links to these three books here and the resource that Ron's going to give us in just a second in the show notes of this particular episode here on the pmpodcast.com. So, Ron, over to you. What is your favorite PMO resource at the moment?
It's kind of a strange answer, but I would say my favorite PMO resource is actually project managers and other stakeholders within my company.
I can't link to that.
Yeah, you can't link to everybody, can you? No, the reason why it is, there's a lot of books out there, and to be honest with you, I haven't done much resource outside on best practices for a PMO. But what I have done is somewhat management by walking around and talking to people and finding out, what seems to be working well? What seems to, where are you getting tripped up? one thing we're doing within our company that's starting to shed a lot of light on our process is we actually had an intern come in last summer, a college intern, and develop basically a Microsoft Access repository of data, whether it be scheduled dates, planned and actual, and budgets, and a place to hold lessons learned and PCRs, project change requests. And this has become a very powerful tool because we now have all the project managers report through this tool, which actually automatically generates a dashboard for, an executive dashboard for our senior staff, and it allows us also to track trends. Are we reducing cycle time over time? So, trying to look at things within the organization of ways of becoming more efficient. A process should always be something, living, something that's continually being improved. And, I think my best resource right now is just talking with people, finding out what works and what doesn't. And
Great.
Also people outside of, my company, looking at websites like both of yours and seeing, best practices that way.
Great. Perfect. Thank you, gentlemen. Once again, we had, on the one hand, Ron Holohan from the PM411.org podcast. Thank you, Ron, for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
And on the other side, we had Shawn Futerer from the International Community for Project Managers, the ICPM.com. Shawn, thanks also for being here.
Cornelius, thank you very much for the invitation. It's always great to talk to you guys.
And that was our PMO Roundtable with Ron Holohan and Shawn Futerer. That's it for today. Thank you very much for listening. And of course, if you like our podcast, then please go ahead and forward it to your friends, co-workers, project management colleagues, or anyone else who might enjoy it. Help us reach out to more listeners. As always, you can find us on the web at thepmpodcast.com. If you are a project manager who wants to become a PMP, then the easiest way to do so is with our sister podcast, the PM Prepcast. Study for the exam by watching over 38 hours of video training from pmprepcast.com. If you are already a PMP, then please take a look at PM Lectures. We go beyond just delivering PDUs. You'll get exclusive training from the brightest minds in project management today. Please send your emails to pmpodcast@gmail.com, and when you write, you will tell me where in the world you are writing from, won't you? And finally, we have this. Correct deliverables on the wrong projects are just as bad as the wrong deliverables on the right projects. Until next time.